So this is the design we're going to be creating in this Photoshop tutorial. Let's have a look around it, because this beginner's web design here that we've chosen is a nice, easy introduction to using your new skills. So first of all, let's look at the background. It's slightly grey, so we'll be using the good old-fashioned paint bucket tool for that. We've got a box here essentially. If I just zoom out a little bit more, it's just a box really containing everything, and that box has got a shadow. And that shadow is, you can see it's at 0% distance, which means it looks as if it's lifting the web design off the page. A nice little trick. If you do use it, ladies and gentlemen, please make sure that you turn the opacity down. If your shadows are too strong, it looks really false and weird. Next one is we've got a nice header here, and you'll notice that the space here is the same as the space here, and that's an important factor just for consistency of layout. And when the eye is looking at the design, it sort of understands it better, and it makes it much neater. Even the navigation here is about 60 pixels, which is the same distance from here. So it's a recurring theme, sort of 60 pixels. There's another one, all right there. And you'll see that helps people understand what everything is. And also, don't forget that proximity gives meaning. So the fact that I'm learning web design, it's got this space between there and there, which is half of 60, which is 30. There's another half of 60, which is 30. All of this being closer together rather than the top and the bottom means it's related, and it is, because it's the title, a bit of a description, and a call to action. If we move down, I've got a nice picture that we've created for you. Just have to sort of plonk it in, and I move down again, and there we go. We've got the nice little footer. Now, you may be wondering how I came up with this design. Well, first of all, I did what every good web designer should do, and that's a nice wireframe. And you can do this on a piece of paper, or you can even do it on something like mockups.com, gomockingbird.com, Flare Builder. There's many ways of doing it. Even our team at the agency uses Illustrator. So you can see here, this is what I planned before I started the design. This isn't going to win awards, but it does help me sort of have an idea of what I'm doing. So I've got my logo there. I know that it's a box layout and banner. The sizes are not too important here, but it does give me an idea of proportion. I'm learning web design, I'm cheap, nice little picture, and then a footer. So as you can see here, this really helps me lead on to something like this. Now the next thing is the sort of fonts and the colours. Well, the fonts for this project are just basic ones, Times New Roman and Arial, just to keep things simple. But the colours do have a story. Let me show you something that's called a branding guideline. Now this is the branding guideline that we use for our school, and if I just move this up a little bit like this, you can see it a little bit better. And these are the kind of things that we use for Web Courses Bangkok. We have two main colours, and we've got the main one there. And I'm using the main green here, and I'm using this one for the navigation. And then down here I'm using these colours for the footer. So you can see by using something like this, you can get some really good identity into your designs. If you are doing a design for a company, ask them for their branding guidelines. If they've got no idea what you're talking about, make it for them. Alright, so that's our planning, and now we need to learn how to do it. So the first thing we need to do is start getting our canvas. So File and New, and then here we go. So we'll just call this Beginner Web Page Design, and that will become Beginner Web Page Design.psd. And then the next thing is we're going to change the width and the height. Now I want lots and lots of size and space to move around when I'm doing my designs. So I'm going to give myself 1600. Now that's 1600 pixels, much more than we need, but it does allow me to see what it would look like on, say, a big monitor. Now we've got a lot to do on this one, so I'm going to guess, and I'm going to say about 1900 for the size of my height. Now this is important, the resolution. If you're using a retina screen like me, often the resolution jumps up to 144. We need this to be 72. You'll probably find that yours is fine with that. Alright, so we just started our new one, and then it's 1600 by 1900 and 72. And something that's very useful is having the background contents white, and that just means that we don't have to paint it white before we do something else. Now, one of the first things I'm going to do just to sort of get warmed up is I'm going to change the color of my background. Now, to do that, I'm just going to go over to the colors here, and I'm just going to do F7, F7, F7. This is something I designed earlier, but it's just a slight grey color. You're welcome to use any color you want, but just don't go massively red and scary or something like that. We want something very, very subtle to go with the rest of the design. Click OK, and now I'm ready to use the paint bucket tool, which is over here. Now, a lot of people get confused when this happens. If you see the gradient tool on the left and I say paint bucket, they start looking around and wondering where the hell it is. So all you need to do is click and hold and you'll see it here. But if you remember that the shortcut is G, you'll get to it a lot quicker. So I'm just going to click in the middle, and you can see not much of a change, but just enough to be subtle and very well designed. Okay, next thing I want to do is set up some guidelines. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to press M, and I'm going to drag right across like that. And this is a little tip. One thing that a lot of people ask me is, how do I know if it's directly in the middle? Well, if you have the ruler turned on like I have, and to do that you can go to View and then Rulers, or press Command and R and Control and R on a PC. When you're here, if these numbers are similar numbers to mine and not 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for example, then just right click and make sure you have pixels. That's really, really important when you're doing web design. We always deal in pixels. If you're doing things like print design, then you're welcome to use centimeters and millimeters. Right, so now we've got the ruler, we've got it in pixels, and we've just pressed M, and we just went dragging across like that. Now what we can do is we can use this as a guide. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to grab a hold of this like that, and then you'll see it snap, alright, like that in the middle, and a weird turquoise looking line will appear. That's one of your guidelines. Now another thing that we can do is I'm just going to zoom in, and I want to give myself some space at the top. So again, I'm just going to make a square like that, and this time I'm going to show you a little trick. Now what you do is if you press down on your keypad, you'll move down 1 pixel. Now we don't want that, we want to move down 10 pixels. So we're going to hold down Shift and then down like this, okay? And that will move 10 pixels. And what I'd like you to do is move actually 60 pixels. So we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6 like that, and then we're just going to drag that down, okay? And that's all we need to do. So we're using this little box here as a guide for a guide. It's a little trick I learned when I was a web designer, and it's been very, very useful. Okay, I'm just going to zoom out. Now if you ever find yourself in this position, you've got something selected, just press Control and D, or Command and D if you're on a PC. Right, so there we go, we've got our 2 guidelines there that are going to come in really, really useful in a minute. Now the next thing we want to do is the actual box where our web design will lie. So to do that, I'm just going to use the rectangle tool, or press U. Now when I do this, the fill here will be the same color as what I've just used. So I might want to change that first. So I'm just going to click on here, and then I'm going to click on white. So there we go, there's white. And then I'm just going to draw a random box, just like that. Now the reason for that is there's no way that I can get it absolutely precise with my unsteady hands. So what I want to be able to do is draw something and then actually change the properties over here to be exactly what I want. Now what I want to use is 960 pixels, and the reason for that is because 960 is a standard size for a lot of websites, especially for one that hasn't got that much content, so it's a good idea to use that number for us. Now the height is another matter, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to actually guess this one. I'm going to say, should we say 1750 pixels? It needs to be quite tall. Alright, there we go, that looks about right. but it's not in the right place, is it? So now we need to go over to the move tool or press V. So just press V and then you'll see it, and what you'll do is as you start to move it around, it'll snap into place. There you go. Do you see that? It takes a little while to get used to that, so move it around if you don't see the snap, and then just go really slowly where you think the middle is, and then boom, you'll see it. And something that's new in CC is when you click it, you'll see that there's actually a space from the guideline. I'm trying to chase it to show you, but I can't actually click it. But you'll see there's 0 pixel, yeah? So I'll just move up. There we go, and it'll snap. Beautiful. Right in the middle. That'll take you a couple of tries to get it, but as soon as you get it, I'm sure you'll feel really happy because you'll know everything is exactly in the middle and where it should be. Now we're going to look at a little bit more advanced type of doing some guides. Now what I want to be able to do is I want to have a couple of guides on the left and right hand side just to show that we have a little bit of space within the page away from the edges. We don't want text and things appearing right to the edge there. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to press Control and plus. Now the number that I like is 30 pixels. It's a good number, not too much like 40 and not too little like 20. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to create a box that's 30 pixels in width, and you'll see if I click and drag like that you can see the size. Something I like to do is hold down Shift. So I'm just going to actually move that in all the way down to 30 like that. Now if you don't have this little thing popping up like I do because you don't have CC, then look to your right. You'll see a little panel called Info, and if you don't have that, go to Window and go to Info. Right, now from here you can see that I've got this lovely little box and I've placed it right to the edge. Let me zoom in and prove that. Control and plus, hold down space, there we go, and then just move it right to the edge like that. Okay, and you can use your arrow keys to get it exactly right if you want. Once you've got it in the right place, drag another guideline like that, and then we're going to zoom out again and we're going to do this on the right hand side. So we're just going to move over like this and pull there like that. And something that you can see here, it makes it a lot easier if you actually have a guideline on the right hand side of the box, and that's pretty easy. So if I just do Control and D and then grab one of my lines, it'll snap. See? There we go. Beep. That's the sound effect for snapping, by the way. Okay, so these lines here are something that we're going to be using later, especially when we do the footer. So this is a nice way of knowing that I've got everything lined up. So just to recap, I made a box of 30 pixels holding down Shift. I put the box against the edge of the design, and then I moved a guideline just to the edge of the box like that. And this is something I do every single time I do a design, and it just makes me confident that when I am designing, that when I start doing the coding for this, then it'll look and be easier to code. Right, now we've done all the setting up, we can start designing at last. I'm sorry to keep you waiting. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're just going to start building everything up into bits and pieces, and making sure that I keep looking at my my mock-ups here. So you can print that out or whatever makes it easy for you, but just make sure you have your wireframe nearby just to give you some direction. Another thing that I advise is hopefully you've spent a little bit of time looking around the internet for some inspiration. So if you have the website that you went, wow, that's the one I want to copy, well, not copy, but be inspired from, then keep that open just to keep yourself heading in the right direction. So one of the first things we want to do is we're going to make the shadow effect. So I'm just going to press Control and H or Command and H on a PC just to hide the guidelines. I just want to be able to see what I'm doing. Now you'll notice that when I'm doing these screencasts, I'll be using Control and plus a lot and space. So please, if you haven't practiced that, do that now. So Control and plus, Control and minus, and holding down space. Now, one of the first things we're going to do is add the shadow effect. So I'm actually going to move over here. Now, as you can see, we've got two things visible here. We've got one of the boxes, which is the actual box itself. We have the name, and then we've got this little space on the right hand side. Double click, and there we go, we get the layer style. Now from here, we're just going to go to drop shadow. Remember to click the word, not the box. Now from here, now I can start playing with this. Alright, so I need to be able to see what I'm doing. So all I have to do is I can move this up and down. Alright, and you can see, if I just move this over, actually the shadow is just over here. Now one of the first things I want to do is I'm just going to change the distance to 0, and I'm going to change the size to about 20. But unfortunately that looks a bit yucky because it's too strong. So I'm going to knock down the opacity down to 40%, and the opacity is how see-through something is. So if you reduce it, it means it goes lighter. Now that looks pretty nice to me, so I'm going to click OK. So remember, for the drop shadow, it's 0 distance, 20 pixels in size, and 40 pixels in opacity. Now we're ready to do our header. Now the header is just a green box. I'm just going to move this down a little bit. So let's make a green box. So I'm just going to click on rectangle tool, and then here just draw basically just a rectangle. Now the reason I'm not worrying about getting it the right size right now is because I'm going to do it very precisely using the numbers here in a minute. Now one of the first things we need to do is change the color. So bottom right hand corner on the layer panel, double click just to bring up the color picker. And I know that my color is 7BC144, and obviously you can change different colors if you want. Click OK, and there we go. We're getting closer. So now we need to get it the right size. Now Photoshop CC brings up this little properties bar here. If you've got older versions, then you just go to the top here. To be honest, I prefer going to the top there. I've been doing it for years. So 960, and make sure you always have PX there. And then I'm going to do 360 PX for the height. Now it's not in the right place, so I'm just going to press V and then move it there, and you'll see it was very easy for me just to move it, and it does it itself really, just because of those grids, which I can see by pressing Command and H. So just to recap, we just created a rectangle, and then we changed the color by double clicking on the layer. Then we use the top properties bar here to give it the size, and then we put it in the middle, just aligning it with the grid. So remember that I had an idea of the design I wanted to do from the mock-up, and I'm just sort of guessing how tall this is, and I can always change it later. Now let's get some elements onto here now. So what we're going to do is we're just going to do Control and plus. Now this is where it's very useful to ask your client for his logo, because you're going to need it right now. So what I've done is, if I just minimize this, is I've already prepared a folder with all of the images, and you'll be able to download that with this course. So if I just double click on there, alright, you can see I've got all of the images that I'm going to need. So one of the first things we want to do is get the logo. So it's logo.png. My advice is definitely prepare all of your images before you start designing, if you're pretty sure of what you're going to do. If you're not, then just design it on the fly. Cool, let's go back to Photoshop. And then we're just going to paste it into here. So File and Place Linked. Forgive me, not paste, but place. Alright, so place embedded. Now place linked I don't advise using, because if you move the Photoshop file around, then it will break the link. So just use place embedded for now. That's normally used with really big images. So let's go back to my desktop, and let's go to beginner website images, or wherever you downloaded the zip file, and then click on logo.png, and then we're going to click on place. So just move that into view, place, like that. Okay, now we've got a number of very useful things. We've got the anchor points around to change the size. We've also got this one in the middle. This confuses the something out of people a lot. So don't click on the middle, because actually what that is this. If I move that there and then I start going like that, and I don't want to do that. So what I want you to do is leave that in the middle. when you're moving stuff around after they've been placed, just click offside or off center to them. Now what I want you to do is move the logo right to the top. Okay, and then what we're going to do is hold down shift and press down 6 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Beautiful. And we know that that's 60 pixels from the top. Press Ctrl and Enter to finish what you're doing, or Command and Enter on a Mac, and there we go. We've got our logo. Not amazing, but we know it's perfectly placed and in the right side. Now the next thing we need to do is a bit of text. So we're pressing T, and remembering what I said about the text tool, we're just going to be creating one line here. If I look at this, we're going to be creating just one line. So I just click on once, and then you'll notice here I've got it center aligned. So just make sure it's center aligned. Now you can move your mouse down to see the move part, and then just move that in the middle like that. Or you can just leave it where it is. So let's just do our name. So just do Carl Heaton. Oh no, I can't see it. Where's my text? Well, the answer is it's the same color as the background, and this is something that confuses a hell of a lot of my students, and indeed me when I was learning Photoshop. So if you do start writing something, there's 2 things to check. Number 1 is the color, and number 2 on the right hand side is maybe you're writing behind a layer. So keep an eye on that. Right, let's change this color. So we're just going to highlight it, and we're going to make it white. So selecting the color, and you'll notice I'm dragging all the way to the top there. Click OK. Now this is all capitals for me, so I'm just going to change that by going to Window and Character. Again, this is something that can confuse people if somebody else has been playing with your Photoshop. And you'll notice I've got this on, and I'm going to need that later, but not right now. So that's what I want. So I just want this to be off. What that does is it changes everything to be uppercase. Now, next thing to do is change the size. So I'm actually going to go for 100 pixels. Yes, that's it. Feeling very important there with my big name. Alright, and then I'm just going to move my mouse down and then drag it like that. Okay. Control and Enter to finish what I'm doing. So let's just do that again. I'm just going to press delete. Right. So slowly now we're going to click once, and you can get everything ready first if you want, like the color and things like that. I've got Times New Roman, I've got regular, 100 points, and I've got it center aligned and a color of white. So Carl Heaton. And again, if you've got a problem with the caps, just check on the character panel and to see if that's there. So let's move this over. There we go. And I'm just going to put it right underneath the logo. Now, Control and Enter. Now the reason I'm doing that is so I can press V, hold down Shift, and down 3 times like that. And I'll know that it's exactly in the right place. Next thing I need to do is a bit of text underneath, and this is where the problem came from with my lovely little capitals. Next things I need to do is my learning portfolio. So if I just go here, I've got my learning portfolio. Excellent. Okay, so press T. Alright, too big. Okay, so what I want to do is I'm just going to go down here and I'm going to change this to Arial. Okay, and then what we're going to do is we're going to change that to 24 pixels. My caps lock keeps turning on. And then we're going to go center line and white again. So my learning portfolio. Brilliant. So again, I'm going to use my move tool, put that under. There we go. And this time I'm just going to use my eye just to make sure that that's in the middle. There we go. Just so, there we go. If you want to be absolutely precise, you can always move this down and go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And you can get it exactly spread out as well. So that's something that's your preference, but try and make sure that you're always doing the same spaces, and when you do, your design will look really nice. Even if you're not a designer by trade, or you just don't have it in you, make sure that you use the same spacing, and any design you do will at least look very neat.